Hi guys. We're continuing in the same section as yesterday. And each day this week I've been introducing a new rule, but today we're going to take all the rules and kind of put them together and talk about which ones you should do first, second, third, and how to know if you have your final answer or if you need to keep going. One of the most common mistakes that I see in this chapter is that students don't do enough steps. They get about halfway through the problem and they stop and they need to keep going. So it's going to be really important that we know when to stop and when to keep going. I do want to recap what we've learned earlier this week. Now, you have actually written all of this down already. So if you don't want to write down this slide, I totally understand. I'm still going to talk through it, but you don't have to write it in your notes if you don't want to. If you find this chart helpful, definitely pause the video after I've gone through the whole thing and write it in your notes if it is helpful to you. All right, so we have 4 columns here. So we have what type of problem it is. So that's going to be a word explaining like it looks like it's multiplying or dividing or something like that. Actual problem will be what it looks like. What to do with the base is what to do with the large sized number, right? It's actually normal size, but it'll be, comparatively speaking, it's the bigger one. And then what to do with the exponent is what to do with the little number, okay? So here is the first one. And so when you have a multiplication problem that looks like this, you're going to keep the base the same, so you don't do any math with the base, and then you're going to add the exponents together. If you have a problem with a negative exponent, that would look like this. You're going to take the reciprocal of the base, so the large number flips. If it was already on the bottom of a fraction, it'll move to the top, and if it was on the top, it'll move to the bottom. And then when you do that, you're going to take your exponent and you're going to make it positive. If there was a 0 for your exponent, that would look like this. Then the base number changes to a 1, and there should be no more exponent in the problem. If you have a power to a power, which looks like this, problem, you're going to keep the base the same, so we don't do any math with the base, and we're going to multiply the exponents together. And then finally, we learned that if there's parentheses with an exponent on the outside, which looks like this, again, the bases stay the same. We don't do any math with the bases, and we distribute the exponent to each base. So again, this is a review. We already learned these earlier this week. I'm just writing it in a different format. If you like this chart and you find it helpful, pause the video to write it down. You definitely want to write down everything on this slide. So on this slide, I'm going to go over all of the steps that you need to take to solve a problem and what order they need to be done in. So our first step, if you see any exponents outside of a parentheses, you have to distribute them to all of the bases inside. You definitely want to write this first sentence. The second sentence is extra information, so if you don't want to write the second sentence, that's okay. We're distributing the exponent outside the parentheses to all the bases inside, and that has to be done first. If there are no exponents outside of parentheses, then you skip that step. For the next step, you should find everything that has a like base and put them together. If they're coefficients, which are just numbers without exponents, you are allowed to multiply those numbers together. But if it's a variable with an exponent, then you're going to add the exponents. So multiply big numbers and add little numbers. This is combining together the things that are like, the things that are similar. Next, you should check and see, after you've combined together your bases, are any of your exponents negative? If an exponent is negative, take that and move it to the bottom of a fraction, or if it's already on the bottom of a fraction, move it to the top. You should also check and see, do any of my base numbers have an exponent on them? So like if you have a 3 squared, you should actually do 3 squared and make it a 9. You'll know that you're done with the problem when these things happen. You only have one of each letter. So if you have a letter X written twice, then you're not done with problem yet. It is possible that some letters will disappear in the process of doing the problem. You cannot have any negative or zero exponents. So if you still have a negative exponent, or if you have an exponent of 0, you're not done with the problem. Finally, any large numbers, these are called coefficients, they can't have exponents. So again, if it says 3 squared, change that to 9. Don't leave it 3 squared for a final answer. And you should simplify them as much as possible. So if you have a 4 and a 2, times those together. 4 times 2 is 8. Don't leave it 4 and 2. And then eventually we're going to do fractions. So if you have a fraction, it's like 10 over 5. Simplify that fraction. These are the steps and the order that you should take, and how to check to see that you have a good final answer. In our next video, I'll do an actual sample where we go through each of these steps.